Good. The special session of the Madison County Board of Education for Wednesday, September 25th, 2019 is in session. The purpose this afternoon is to interview our third candidate for the superintendent's position for the Madison County Schools. At this time, I'd like to ask our audience to please turn off any cell phones, or silence them at least, and out of due respect to our candidate, please keep any conversations to a minimum. Dr. Guinn, thank you very much for being here this afternoon. We've had an opportunity to be with you all day to get to learn and to know you a little bit more. We've all read your resume, but for the audience and for what we're also videotaping, so for those of you, for those out there, could you please just give us a little bit of your background and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, I am Tim Guinn. I'm the current Assistant Superintendent at Russellville City Schools. I have 28 years experience in the field of education. Of those 28, 22 of those have been in the field of administration. I have been married 31 years to Sandy Guinn. We have two children, Andrew and Avery. Andrew is a senior at University of North Alabama, and Avery is my 17-year-old junior at Russellville High School. Began my career 28 years ago in the classroom as a math and chemistry teacher, also a football and basketball coach. Career spanned again over 4 different school systems, from Lawrence County school system to Tuscumbia City, Franklin County, and culminates here in Russellville City.
Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. We're going to keep the interview to about 90 minutes.
Okay.
So if you're ready, Dr. Guinn?
I'm ready.
I will begin, and I'll let Ms. Bates begin with the first question.
Wasn't ready.
You weren't ready?
Just kidding. All right. Please give us a thumbnail sketch of your professional experiences, your pivotal belief on public education, and why you are interested in being our superintendent.
Oh, very well. Let me start with the last part of that question first. Why do I want to be your superintendent? First and foremost, I think that I can make a positive difference in the lives of students, faculty, administrators, and parents. Number two, with my vast experience in the field of education, again spanning over 28 years, as both an administrator, a teacher, and a coach, I feel it's time for me to take the next position at the next level and lead a system. Okay, so for a thumbnail of my experience, again, not to labor the issue, but I began my career in the most important position in the field of education, that is a classroom teacher. That is the individual that has the greatest impact on students, their achievement, and their future. And I thoroughly enjoyed every moment that I had in the classroom. And truthfully, at that time, I never intended to leave it. Administration was not part of my game plan at that time. I was also an Army reservist and had a parallel career, and I wanted to develop that career as well as teach and coach at the same time. Administration just wasn't in the back of my mind. After 2 years of working in the classroom, we had an assistant principalship that came open at a 4A high school. The principal called me in that summer and asked if I would take it. He had offered it to 3 different people and been turned down. And he needed someone to do the job, and I agreed. So that's how I first got into the field of administration. And I was an assistant principal at the 4A and 5A levels. I took a principalship at the 1A level, a K through 12 unit school, for 3 years, became the last of the tenured principals in the state of Alabama. I became tenured the summer that the legislature passed the law concerning contract principalships. Gave up tenure, which has never meant much to me. I think if we do our jobs correctly, tenure matters little. I gave up tenure to go to Russellville High School as an assistant principal there, and then later became the principal and now the assistant superintendent. So that's kind of a thumbnail of the experiences that I've had. My pivotal belief in my educational philosophy revolves around 3 equally important facets. The first and foremost is the core belief that every child can learn and should be challenged to achieve at their highest personal academic best. Now, what that means is that not every child can learn at the same rate, not every child can learn at the same depth. But it is our job as educators to help a child achieve as much as they possibly can within their capabilities. Okay? And that is achieved by hiring motivated, caring, professional, knowledgeable, and competent educators to teach those children. And again, as in the research of Harry Wong suggests, the most important facet of a child in their academic achievement rests on the shoulders of that teacher in the classroom. Second, yet equally important is to the first, is the core belief that education is a continual process of growth for the educator as well, and that growth is rooted in good quality professional development. Over 28 years, I've seen a lot of professional development for teachers. Some of it has been good, a lot of it has not been. I don't believe in wasting time, and I don't believe in wasting resources and money on professional development that has not been previously proven to be effective. And then number three, and certainly not least, is the concept of professional, knowledgeable, and caring educational leadership. Every administrator needs support. I believe the superintendent's job is to support the school administrator. And I espouse the teachings of John C. Maxwell and Ken Blanchard in the servant leadership model. I've read most everything that John Maxwell has put out. I espouse it, and that has been the model of leadership that I have held, not only in my career as an educator, but also in the military. And it works. And so to recap, every student can learn. Every teacher needs quality PD. Every administrator needs support at whatever level they're in. And I offer that leadership under the auspices and ideology of a servant leadership model. Did I answer the question? I think I did.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Number 2, what is your greatest professional disappointment, and what, if anything, did you learn from that?
Another good question. And you'll have to forgive me, my throat is a bit dry. Over the past 2 days, I've been fighting a sinus issue. I was reading an article the other day about Babe Ruth, and even though at the time he played Major League Baseball, he held the record for home runs, didn't realize he also held a record for about 3 times the number of strikeouts. I think that's true for any successful administrator or military commander, for that matter, that regardless of the amount of success that we've had, I think that we also have some professional disappointments. So in answering that question, I reached way back to the very start of my career, to something that occurred that kind of changed the way that I dealt with people and actually began my road toward the servant leadership model. While I was a young novice administrator, we had a great start to a school year that year. I'll never forget it. Everything was going smooth. The football team was winning. Things were going well. The principal was doing his job well. I was doing mine. And all of a sudden, the principal took ill, in a very serious illness that took him out of the school for really the entire year. And so there I was, an administrator in my 4th year of administration, but still in my mid-20s. And I had a large 4A high school with a faculty that the average age was much more than mid-20s. What I thought when the principal took ill was that the faculty would rally around and support one another, support me, and that we could move the school forward. And that was my disappointment. What I found was that many of the faculty began to wreak havoc, some in the community, many in their classrooms, stop engaging students. They took an attitude that, now I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying several, took an attitude of discontent, and chaos. They stopped teaching, they stopped engaging students, and some even tried to jockey for the job of the interim principal during that time. Anyway, it made for a very, very stressful year. And it was several weeks before an interim was actually named. And during that time, I learned to utilize that situational leadership model and servant leadership model. And this is the most important lesson that I learned. Being a young administrator in my early 20s, even though I had positional power and authority, that meant very little when you're talking about a veteran teacher in front of a Board of Education or in front of a superintendent. So I had to learn to use influence, buy-in, and discussion with teachers during that time to get them to do the right thing. And I learned not to use autocratic decision-making models in dealing with professional teachers at that time. So at such time in the future when the interim did come in, was placed in the school, we already had it running fairly smooth, and it was an easy transition. But it was a life lesson.
With funding tight, teachers, administrators, and support staff have taken on more and more responsibilities. Describe your management style and the methods you have found to be most effective in supervision and building rapport with administrators. What methods would you employ to keep them encouraged and keep morale high?
Okay. So to reiterate the leadership model, servant leadership model by John Maxwell, being a servant leader means that we lead by building teammanship. In my problem-solving model, I try to bring in knowledgeable people that have knowledge of the issues and the problems at hand, and we work together to solve it. Never do I believe that I have all the answers that rest in my head, even though I may have 28 years experience and maybe one of the more experienced people in the room. It doesn't mean that I have the answer to everything, that everyone's opinion is valued, and together we can work to solve whatever problem may come. So when I have a parent that wants to complain about an administrator over an issue, I begin with asking the big four question: has the administrator done anything that is immoral, illegal, unethical, or against board policy? And if the answer comes back collectively no, then what is the parent really arguing about? They're arguing about a decision they simply disagree with. They can't necessarily, their opinion of the decision is no more or less valuable than the principal that made that decision. In that light, if a principal made a decision that is within the parameters of board policy and within reason of the law, I have always supported them. But at the same time, the parent's view is valued, and I do listen to them. And I will open the door and discuss with them any matter that they wish to discuss for any length of time they wish to discuss it. But it doesn't mean that they're going to get a principal's decision overturned simply because they don't like it.
All right, question 4. Suppose the board disagreed with a policy you believed to be educationally sound. How would you handle that situation?
Well, through open and honest academic discourse. At the end, if there's still an impasse, and then we just simply don't administer the policy. It's okay to disagree. I think that's one of the tenets of a democracy. And I spent 23 years defending that democracy, and I believe in it. It's okay to disagree. It's not okay to be disagreeable, and that goes for me too. Number 2, I don't always have to be right. One of the things that I do in my daily practice when I make decisions throughout the day, at the end of the day, I will use a reflective thought process about the day. What went right? What went wrong? What could have been done different? How could I have handled it differently? And these reflective thought processes have helped me identify weaknesses in my own communication abilities. Sometimes it may be my inability to communicate clearly to you, and that may be why you're disagreeing, unsure. And then number 3, I believe in a team approach. The Board of Education is a major player in moving the system forward. And I don't know of any one decision that would be worth a divisive board, especially a recommendation that I may make and you may disagree with. I had rather set my recommendation aside and not move forward with it than to divide you.
Okay. Question 5. Suppose you identified an administrator who needs improvement. What process would you use to improve the competence of that person, and what corrective action would you take?
Well, the first thing that I do with any leader or teacher that I think needs improvement is I try to ascertain the strength of that leader to change. And with that comes 2 things: their willingness to change and their capability to change. And I base my actions on one of the 4 possible outcomes of those 2 things. Either the person is willing and able to change, or they are willing but incapable of change, or maybe they're capable but simply unwilling. And then the worst case is they are unwilling and incapable of change. And again, that goes back to Ken Blanchard's situational leadership models. For the best case scenario, where we have an administrator that is willing to change and capable of changing, whether or not they believe they should would be irrelevant. If they are willing to, then I sit down with that administrator. We look at the PLP, Professional Learning Plan. We develop goals and expectations for that change. And during the plan, we have timelines and times to go back and monitor and revisit. The thing about plans is that once you initiate them, they are doomed to failure if you never pick them back up again. So meeting with that individual on a scheduled timeline, discussing progress that has been made and issues that are still lacking would be paramount to the success of that. On the worst case scenario, with a leader who is unwilling to change and incapable of change, it would simply be best if they found somewhere else to be.
Thank you.
Eliminating the achievement gap is a must. What approaches would you pursue? What leadership and guidance would you provide to ensure that these approaches are properly evaluated and adjusted over time to meet changing student needs?
Okay. Eliminating the achievement gap seems to be a systemic problem across the state of Alabama. Each system having their own unique obstacles that they face that prevent them from reaching that end state. At this stage, I would not dare to even attempt a course of action without first carefully considering the data and identifying patterns to help define what the obstacles to our achievement actually are. Number 2 is develop that team approach, bring in knowledgeable people from across the system, the key players, including central office curriculum personnel, school level principals, curriculum assistant principals, to discuss the data and to accurately define the problem and then to pose a possible solution. And then last is developing, executing, and evaluating the plan designed to alleviate those obstacles and to raise academic achievement. And as any plan, if it's not working, you revise it and you go back and execute again.
What do you think is the role of career technical education?
I think the role of career and technical education is to afford all students an opportunity to learn and explore possible career paths that are outside the college-required fields of study, to credential those students interested in pursuing those CTE career paths and to ensure they're prepared for their next step in their career progression.
Please give us an overview of your involvement in financial planning and decisions at your current school or district, and your assessment at your level of understanding regarding how schools are funded on a state, federal, and local level.
Okay. My involvement in financial planning and decision-making of the school, well, we'll start with the Educational Trust Fund. I've been on many, many meetings every year when we get our ADM reports, average daily membership, which our funding is based. Not only the number of teacher units that we have earned and are paid for by the state, but also funding in transportation, OCE, other current expenditures, and that sort of thing. We begin the process in October with our own data. We collect it before we get it from the state, and so we have an idea. We don't like surprises, and most of the time we're pretty accurate with that. And we use this data in October in anticipation of current divisors staying the same and plan for changes in our Educational Trust Fund units for the following year. And I often meet with the administrative team at the central office to discuss with schools their gains and loss of units. And that's, of course, based on student enrollment and where or if we need to backfill that school with local funded units before we present the data to the board. And next, I'm heavily involved in developing, executing, and evaluating our system's strategic plan. And part of that strategic plan is materials and resource component that is coupled with capital outlay funds for projected building projects that we have passed. We're going to the bond market, and we hope to be able to start building as early as the spring, maybe in the summer. And third, my office is over student enrollment, K through 12. Every student that enrolls themselves in Russellville City Schools comes through us. And I know that our funding in ETF is to include transportation, and OCE funds are based on that student enrollment. So I track this number very closely. And I have to keep a balance between overcrowded conditions in our school system, as well as the appropriate number of students to gain or keep current teaching units. And my level of understanding regarding how schools are funded, I would say would be above average.
Question 9, presenting information in a highly charged situation and to a variety of groups is a part of a superintendent's job. Give an example of how you have encountered opposition and how you have dealt with the resulting situation.
Well, I've dealt with several situations that were highly emotionally charged in my career and at differing levels, both at school and at the central office. Everything from parent focus groups, which I led in developing our strategic plan, to angry parents over a school issue, or angry parents over an athletics issue. And how I deal with those follows pretty much the same course. The first is give the people a voice, whether they're the emotionally charged individual is a faculty or staff member or a parent. Give them a voice, an attempt to have them articulate that problem, and also a possible solution, especially if they're a faculty member or administrator. If you're bringing me a problem, you need to have a possible solution with it. Don't just bring a problem and lay it at my desk and turn and walk away. You need to be part of the problem solution. Same thing with parents. Sometimes they're right when they bring a problem to us, and we need to relook some things. So I keep an open mind, but I always remain calm, give them a voice, and ask them to articulate exactly what their problem is. And what I've found in that is sometimes in the articulation, they realize after they actually say the words that it's not as big a problem as they thought that it was. And number two, I take complex issues and I break it down to the simplest form. Throughout my military career, I've seen this on OER forms from different units that I've come to and didn't really realize that they had that perception of me. But most of the unit commanders said that I had the ability to take complex issues and remove the surrounding fluff and get right to the point of the matter. And the point of the matter is what we focus on. The point of the matter is what we deal with in solving any issue that we have. And the important thing for me in dealing with highly emotionally charged issues and situations is personally to harbor no ulterior motives or hidden agendas, to be open, honest, and transparent with people.
Okay, question 10. Describe specific strategies you have used to promote public support for school activities, budgets, and instructional programs.
Well, back in 2009, Russell City Schools was at the cusp of needing an additional revenue stream. Of course, if you all remember, the recession of 2008 hit school systems very, very hard. Proration every year, and to a very deep extent, we were having taken, of course, funds out of our local coffers to cover those expenses the state demanded that we have and yet wouldn't cover. So in 2009, we developed the concept of a 1-cent sales tax in Franklin County. And I remember to this day every parent meeting, every PTO, Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club, different venues that I could speak, and I was invited to speak, as I did. And not just me, but the superintendent as well. And we put it out to our teachers and got them on board, and the county voted for a 1-cent sales tax to be given to the school overwhelmingly for a 2-year period. And every 2 years we would go back. The good thing about Franklin County is they do value education, and so I didn't have to give those same speeches every 2 years. The great thing about this past year is that the county, we put it to them for a 30-year vote, and they passed it over 80%. So we now have more stable funding that we can possibly go to the bond market now and build some much needed facilities that our school desperately needs. I was also part of the push to implement the AP programs in our high school. And I did that by applying for and accepting the A+ College Ready grant. And then I convinced our Board of Education for those areas that the grant did not cover, mainly the social sciences, that they would pick up the rest. And the deal was if I applied for the grant and actually got it, they would cover it. And when I got it, they covered it. But I had to do a lot of convincing. It took about a year in preparation for that. I started with the faculty and staff, talking with them about the new program, what it was going to be like, the additional training and professional development that I needed them to go to. And then next was the community. I had to convince the parents that, yes, we're going to challenge their children. Yes, it's going to be harder. Yes, they're going to have more homework, but it's going to be worth it. They're going to get a better education. They're going to be more prepared for college. They have the capability of scoring well on the exam and getting a college credit through the AP program. And so I needed students to sign up for those voluntarily. And the first year we did, it was huge. And it's still ongoing today, I'm proud to say. Also, an ROTC program. I started that when I was at Russellville, which also took a little extra funding. It was the second ROTC program that I had started, the first one as an assistant principal at Lawrence County High School, and this latest one was my first year as principal. I was told by a lot of people it wouldn't work in Russellville, I shouldn't even attempt it, but I felt I knew my kids and my parents a little better. And so I went out and garnered support and talked to the superintendent and the board, and they agreed that we would attempt an ROTC program. So through my normal military contacts, I started the program with an NDCC, a National Defense Cadet Command, which we had to fund fully for the first year. Actually, we were supposed to fund it more than that, but my pleas to 6th Brigade came back and they heard me, and they funded it for year 2, fully funded with 2 instructors on a 2-for-1 funding level. And we have a very thriving ROTC program now. It's all volunteer, grades 9 through 12. They have over 100 students in the program in a school that's only about 700 total. And the strategy for parent and community engagement is straightforward. If you develop a good plan and you communicate the plan correctly, the support will come.
Dr. Guinn, thank you so far. We've got 2 left. Give us your opinion on the role of technology in the classroom and how to engage staff/teachers and get their buy-in.
Well, I believe the role of technology to enhance student academic achievement and to continue to make America an innovative leader in the world is paramount in our educational system, and I think we here in Alabama need to do our part in that. Everything from robotics to rocketry to cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, I think we should immerse our students in appropriate technological education. At Russell City Schools, after winning the world's rocketry competition about 5 years ago, we began to immerse all of our students, beginning with the elementary, in coding in order to develop a pass-through group that would eventually become part of our engineering academy and take part in our rocketry teams and our robotics teams and our green car teams. And an efficient means of getting buy-in from teachers to engage teachers to use technology as a supplement to what they teach in the classroom and to immerse our students in that is appropriate professional development. I believe many teachers are reticent to use technology because they're afraid of it. They're not very good at it. They don't really know how to use it or how it will help enhance their classes. But I think given the opportunity, if they're shown how to do something, they'll develop the confidence to use it, and they would begin using it in the classroom, or that has been my experience in the past.
As we select a new superintendent for Madison County Schools, what are the top 3 strengths and attributes you believe that you can bring to our system?
I believe the top 3 attributes that I can bring to your system is the ability to build strategic and problem-solving leadership teams, that is, bringing people together. The ability to bridge gaps with community and community leaders, soliciting their help in moving the school district forward. And the knowledge and experience at every level of education, from teacher coach to assistant principal, principal, and assistant superintendent. That knowledge and experience, is that thunder? Oh, that's great.
Makes me,
your windows
makes me glad that my
need
windows
that.
are
We
open.
We
that
do
rain.
need that, yeah. I'm happy.
Sorry.
That's all right. Raining in you, oh, good. Man, rain on me on the way home. But anyway, knowledge and experience is something you can read about in a book if you like. You can even sit in a class and study about it. But it's not something you can learn from those venues. You actually have to live it.
Thank you, Dr. Guinn. That concludes the prepared portion of it. The board has developed additional questions that we are going to present to you. We'll present to you 2 additional questions, so I'll begin with that. We have very effective and successful professional learning community programs ongoing in Madison County Schools. What are your thoughts regarding PLCs?
I like PLCs, and I got to see some of that today and actually hear from one of your principals regarding the PLCs. And what I heard, I really liked. It's something that we also have instituted in Russell City Schools, basically. And I really like what you're doing with respect to the standards. You're taking the standards and you're unpacking them. And what I heard the principal tell me is part of their PLCs, they're unpacking them by department or by subject area, and developing a pacing guides and scope and sequence, developing their own benchmark testing, and then within the department testing those students on a particular timeline throughout the year to show academic growth based upon those pacing guides and timelines. That's well ahead of the curve. That's good. I like that. I think you certainly shouldn't build on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And this is your final question. High performance by students and accountability are priorities for us. With your knowledge of our current performance levels, in what areas do you think improvement is needed? And how would you address those needs as the superintendent?
Well, I know that in the areas of reading and math, again, that is somewhat systemic across the state and here as well. I think that developing phonetic awareness in a reading program is paramount to student achievement in the English language arts and in reading. Mathematics, I believe in rigorous mathematical programs. Again, I was a math teacher for many years, from algebra to calculus. And I like laying the foundations as part of the A+ College Ready in preparation for the AP programs. That's some of the most rigorous mathematics that you'll see. So I think appropriate professional development that is rigorous for the teacher and holding students to a high standard of accountability, I think they'll rise to meet that standard. That would be an area that I would focus on in order to raise student achievement, without knowing what obstacles you have that might prevent that.
Okay.
Again, thank you, Dr. Guinn, for spending the day with us. We thank you for your interest in applying for the position of superintendent. And I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.